We now know that Nico Iamaleava, he asked for more money. He's getting more money to be a Vol. We don't know how much more money, but it is money that could have been spent elsewhere. Should Tennessee have let Nico Iamaleava walk? Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. What say you, Caleb Calhoun? Let's assume it was a significant amount of money, because I don't think that Nico, and I'm told it's his family, not him, I don't think they would have gone to get an extra couple of $100, but they got some more cash that could have been better spent elsewhere. They could have let him walk. Your thoughts? Would you have considered that given his play last year and the fact that he's already Tennessee's highest paid player at over $2 million annually?
With the principle of I'm typically team let quarterbacks walk. I'm the guy who said the Ravens never should have given Joe Flacco that contract he asked for after he won the Super Bowl, by the way. So, and I think I was proven right on that. I'm going to violate my own principle on that and say, no, they should have done what they can to keep him for this reason. There is way too much pub over the fact that Tennessee football went to war with the NCAA over Nico. They basically publicized that they paid him $2 million a year. They have Josh Heupel staked his whole future on the success of Nico Iamaleava. If he walks, I don't think that's just the first thing that hurts your team at that point. I think you end up dealing with a ton of transfers, recruits looking elsewhere, because if this guy walks, the guy you staked your whole program around, the entire future of your program around, then all of a sudden, I think a lot of other people would start raising red flags, and maybe a lot of recruits would start raising red flags and say, I don't know if I want to be part of this program. Now, maybe it's different because in the NIL age, maybe people don't think that much about walking anymore. But I think it would have looked too bad for Tennessee.
I agree. This is not your average guy like a Squirrel White going somewhere or an Amari Jefferson going somewhere. This is a guy that's your linchpin of the university. So the one way that I would have let him walk and had no problem with it whatsoever, Caleb, is if I thought he was in some ways a cancer or a bad vibe in the locker room because he wasn't happy with his money. That would have been an issue with me. But everything I've been led to believe is that this was a family thing and he's an incredible teammate. So there's a big difference between parents and agents doing what they do, looking out for their kid, and then there's something else if you've got a disgruntled player. Probably part of the reason you and I see Juwan Jennings a little bit different, but I don't think Nico is disgruntled. I don't think he's happy with the way that Tennessee utilized him and ran their offense last year. But I will say this, you're absolutely right. He was the face of NIL. To lose him would have been an absolute monstrous loss.
Yes, and we also have to talk credibility of people, by the way, too. Even though there are some red flags we raised about Josh Heupel, he still at least has enough cachet to say if there's a disgruntled player, then you let him walk. The reason I was the way I was with Juwan Jennings was I was so fed up with covering Butch Jones. I thought, you know what, if you're disgruntled with Butch Jones, and I'm totally on your side in that moment. So it's a little bit of a different scenario. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, and if you let him walk, there's just no way around it. Now, from a purely football perspective, divvying up NIL funds, like if it's the NFL, Dave, okay, I would say maybe let him walk because it's a bit of a different situation. Because I don't think he's worthy of the NIL money he's commanding, and you could find a decent enough quarterback and put enough talent around him with the rest of the NIL money. But I think if you're Tennessee and you're thinking about, you got to think about the politics and the optics of building your program. I mean, I think you would agree with me on this, Dave, right? Optics matter a heck of a lot more in college football than they do NFL. Optics don't matter at all in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think college football will fall in line with that. In other words, if a parent or agent calls, you have some dealings with them, but you're not going to have continual dealings. And I've been around players that parents have done this, of calling every week saying, oh, this is not the way to utilize my son. This is a problem, this, that, and whatever. And And Caleb, that's just not something you can tolerate. So players have more leverage now. It used to be they were tied to a scholarship that was going to keep them in place. And if they left, they had to sit out a year and maybe pay their own way. I do think that you have to have someone now on your staff, on your coaching staff, that can deal with these sorts of things. So not a coach, but how you have an analytics guy. You need a guy that is going to be able to deal with this sorts of things. Go to Josh Heupel, and they may have this guy, but this is a lot to ask of a head football coach. That they may have this guy. I don't think they do at this point, but somebody needs to negotiate this stuff, because Josh Heupel, with recruiting, getting the team ready, all that he does, has too much going on. So Nico Iamaleava still on the team for Coach Caleb and Dave Hooker. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones.
All right, Caleb Calhoun. The thing is, Tennessee, however, if they decided that they were going to let Nico walk, would still be in a pretty good quarterback position with Merklinger and McIntyre coming in. There are a lot of teams that we would be jealous of having 2 4-star guys in-house, which Tennessee will have in addition to Nico this upcoming fall.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I think that's one of the reasons you would consider letting him walk, because like I said, from a personnel standpoint, I wouldn't have thought it was that big of a deal. Not only would you have Nico and McIntyre, but Dave, I mean, there's a transfer portal window in spring. If you let him walk, then all of a sudden you have if you were to let him walk, you don't think a bunch of quarterbacks that are really elite would willingly try to get to Tennessee at that point, given what they know about Josh Heupel's offense and what he runs? And
I would have said that last year. I don't think it's as sexy of a pool as it was previously.
I still think there are some that would be interested, though. I could be wrong on that, but I think there are some elite ones. And look, I've said this. I don't think Josh Heupel needs the best quarterback to run his system. I mean, it helps, but I think there's certain things that they have to be able to do, and if they're in the right environment, they can put up gaudy stats. So
I will say this, though. I think the one thing that you didn't get out of Nico, and maybe it's just because he was a freshman, Caleb, I don't think you got the take charge leadership type of ability that you were hoping for. I think Nico's a great leader. I think he's more of a leader by example. But a leader by example, oftentimes at quarterback, is a little bit disappointing. I want my quarterback, unlike any other position in sports, to be a take charge guy. And we still don't know completely if Nico is that type of guy.
No, I'm totally with you. I've always felt that way. I mean, I want I don't want to go through the motions, do as you're told type of quarterback. I want a quarterback that's going to, purposely grab a team by the throat and say, we got to, just kind of push forward. And it is hard to see Nico in that light a lot of times, because he does seem to struggle with that concept of grabbing a team by the throat and taking them forward. And it's like, you're right. That's what you want from your quarterback a lot of times, more than any other position, even if they're not the best quarterback. And they don't have to they don't have to be Hendon Hooker, Peyton Manning, who were screaming, yelling in your face. You know what I mean? My understanding, and you may know more, but Hendon Hooker was a scream and get in your face type of quarterback, wasn't he?
Yes. No, he certainly was. Joe Milton was the type of quarterback that said, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't.
I mean, you don't have to be, but there is a line. Like, I'm not even asking Nico to be Hendon Hooker, Peyton Manning, but I would say somebody like, again, a T. Martin, who was more, he didn't get in your face and get in your throat, but he definitely kind of led the team, led the offense. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think you just don't see that. You see too much of a do as you're told type of guy in Nico. And I don't want just to, Your coach is doing that all the day. Well, he does everything he's asked. It's like, okay, but I want him to do a little bit more than he's asked, honestly.
Yep.